This is Dan Hook from Hook Outdoors, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Get Outdoors with Hook Outdoors podcast. Today, me and Evan Barker are going to be discussing the newly released 2021 Bassmaster Open Series schedule. They've done things a little different this year. They went from a basically two region, four tournament per region deal to where now they have three regions and nine events, and it's a pretty good thing. Evan, what's your thoughts on the change in the format, at least so far?
I kind of like where they incorporated the northern swing of the Bassmaster Opens. Last year and in years prior, they just ran the Central and the Eastern Division tournaments,
Yeah,
and
right.
you have all your northern hammers that live up there, New York, Michigan, things like that, who
Hmm.
have to travel down and fish
Right.
lakes that don't really suit their style, and
Sure.
spend a ridiculous amount of money to fish tournaments that don't really suit their style.
Okay.
But now that they've added that northern swing, it'll kind of give those northern guys a chance to really, show their guns and fish their strengths and see what they can do on that high
Yeah.
playing field.
Yeah, and and that's the biggest deal, I guess, with this. You've still got the Southern and you've still got the Central divisions, but like you were talking about the new Northern swing, and that's what it is. It is strictly a Northern deal, um, and the amount of qualifiers that they're taking from these opens and letting them go to the that are qualifying to go to the Classic, the number has stayed the same as far as the amount of anglers that can go and the amount of anglers that can get invited to like the Elite Series. They just broke it down a little bit more to where they're taking basically, I guess, what, like three from each division now and then like three from the overall point standing. Is that kind of the way that's set up?
I think that's kind of what they're doing. Yeah, they're going to take, the opens like any other tournament schedule. They run by a point system. Say you win the tournament, you get say 300 points, and if you get second, you get 299, and so on and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
in each division, like last year, where they had the Eastern and the Central division, they
Mm-hmm.
took the top four guys in points from each division
Right.
to give them an invite to the Elite Series, and then
Yeah.
what they done from there is they combined the Eastern and Central tournaments and threw it all into one points race. So, the guys who fished both the Eastern and Central divisions, they were put into a separate points race. And then those four guys who qualified from the points there also qualified and got the invite to the Elite Series. So I think they're kind of using that same format this year, but with
Right.
just a little bit different.
Yeah, it's just where they've added the extra division. They've had to switch the numbers and stuff around and that kind of thing. But it's pretty exciting, really. They normally start those deals in January, but due to all the COVID stuff and pushing back the 2020 tournaments, which literally just wrapped up what, just a few weeks ago there they had that last one. um you know they have these won't actually start. The first tournaments don't start until March. But is that right? Didn't they just wrap up the last open not long
I
ago?
think yeah, they just wrapped up the last Bassmaster Open on Lay Lake. I think around
Yeah.
two or
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks ago. So
Yeah, it
it's
was.
just it's a really fast swing back into things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you've got guys from this past year that qualified for um, the Elite Series from the Opens, and
Mm-hmm.
they're starting right. They're going right back around. They only have about a month or a little bit more break until they're right into the Elite Series schedule.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, we'll get right into the schedule now. The only other thing, as far as I'd like to talk about a little bit, is just like the setup of it. These opens, that you have two guys in a boat, but it's a boater non-boater deal. Unlike the Elite Series where you just have the single angler in the boat. And I think like the entry fee for like the on the boater side is like $1,800 per event. I think the non-boater is about half of that, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe even not that much, but um, it's not cheap to do, but there's not that many events, and they pay back so much money over a season's time. If they have a full field, they pay back. If they have a full 150 boat field, see, they pay back like $250,000 per tournament, to all the places and everything. And over the course of the 9 events, there's an overall payout of about $2,250,000. So the payouts are pretty good, and they pay down pretty far if they have enough boats show up.
The opens are a great, they're a stacked, field to fish, and you're fishing against some of the best fishermen in the world, are arguably the best fishermen in the world.
Right,
You
right.
have a lot of guys from, the Elite Series that come down and fish them, the FLW Pro Circuit, some Major League Fishing guys, are fishing them. And then, you got all your local hammers, like, in
Mhm,
the southern, like in the Southern Opens, if you have somebody who lives, in Alabama or somebody in that region who
mhm.
is familiar with all that, those guys are going to be more dangerous to me than some of the Elite Series guys. So the Bassmaster Opens are a very competitive field, but it's also a great organization to fish. Bassmaster, to
Mhm.
me, they're the most prestigious tournament organization in the country.
Sure, yeah.
They run everything right. They run it fair. They have great people working for them, and they really know how to put on a great tournament. Just from tournaments I fished through high school and all that stuff, and being familiar with the Kentucky Bass Nation, which is kind of a leg of Bassmaster. They have
Right,
great people. They have great people under them that really know how to run tournaments. So the
right.
opens are a very good schedule, and it's a great organization.
And we'll get right into it and the three divisions and where they're going. But like for folks that live in this area, the first division we'll start with is a Southern Division, and that's if you consider yourself more an upper tier angler, this, and you want to test yourself out against these elite level anglers. This is a division that even someone from here could fish, because these tournaments are spread out enough to where working people can fish them, and they're close enough really to like, say, if you live here, that you could fish this division, and it wouldn't be that big of a strain on you. And we'll just get right to it. Like their first tournament is March 4th through 6th. Um, and it's on the Harris Chain in Florida. And just to give you a little bit more background on the way these tournaments are set up, if I'm not mistaken, everybody fishes the first 2 days, boater and non-boater, and then the non-boater winner is chosen on the second day, and then the third day is just the top. What do they take? The top 10,
I think
top
the top.
20?
I think the top 12.
Okay, the top.
Bassmaster. Yeah, Bassmaster. They've always taken the top 12 on
They
their
take they
championship
take
days.
the top 12 boaters, and you're just fishing against other boaters. There's no non-boaters fishing on that last day. But anyways, that's kind of how that's set up. But like the first leg is in Florida on the Harris Chain, and it's Florida, beginning of March. What's your ideas on that, Evan?
The Harris Chain. It's a countrywide. It's a well known fishery. Everybody likes Harris Chain, and it always produces big bags. They're going in March. Those fish in Florida, they should be. There probably might still be a few fish spawning, but I'd say most fish by then will be, in more in the post spawn stage.
Right, right.
So we'll still see the traditional Florida patterns,
Mhm.
punching mats, hyacinth mats, things like that, throwing swim jigs up in the shallow grass.
Right.
But something that Harris Chain's been known for over the past little bit, just, kind of watching tournaments on it and things like that, is, it's offshore fishing.
Hmm. Right.
You've got those, offshore sandbars, offshore, hydrilla,
Hmm. Hmm.
shell beds, rocks, things
Right.
like that. Something
Right.
that a lot of people who don't pay attention to things, like, a lot of guys, they'll just get up there and they'll be flipping grass, throwing a swim jig, things like that. But the tournaments are won by not necessarily every time, but if you can find something offshore, whether it be, a shell bed or anything like that, or offshore
Hmm.
hydrilla, that's
Hmm.
where tournaments are won.
Hmm.
So
Now,
if,
when you
if you can, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that just to kind of give people a little bit more idea of the Harris chain. I mean, it's a chain of lakes. It's a chain of body of waters, and that you can fish from one to the other. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, the Harris Chain of Lakes. I think there's 4 or 5
Yeah,
lakes
yeah,
that make up the Harris Chain,
yeah.
and
That.
they're all. You've got some lakes that are more well known for kicking
Hmm.
out tournament winning bags, and you've still
Hmm.
got lakes, but each different lake has its different
Right.
suits and different ways of fishing. So it's going to be interesting to see how many guys, like say in the top 12, how many of those guys are in the same areas, or if they're going to be pretty well, spread out.
Hmm. And then from the Harris chain, if then basically a month and a week, month and a half later, April 15th through the 17th, they come north to Douglas Lake, Tennessee, which that's you could consider that in our backyard, really. It's about a 3.5 hour drive from here. So, if you're someone that's thinking that you could do this, this could be in your wheelhouse as far as that goes. So, Evan, what's the deal with Douglas Lake?
Douglas Lake, it's right outside of Jefferson City, Tennessee. You got
Hmm.
Cherokee and Douglas, they're right on top of
Sure.
each other.
Yeah.
And, Cherokee is the more known smallmouth fishery, and you've got Douglas down there where the Bassmaster Open's heading to. It's more of a well known largemouth fishery. It
Hmm.
sets up, almost like a Tennessee River Lake with, offshore fishing and things like that.
Hmm.
So, going there in April, then them fish they'll be in full fledged spawning mode. Those
Hmm.
fish will be up shallow. The guy who wins the tournament he'll be up on the bank. Could be a little bit of bed fishing coming in. I'd kind of like to see a tournament getting won on bed fish. That's just kind of cool to watch. But dominantly most everybody in the field is going to be fishing shallow, up a creek looking for spawning fish. Whether
Right.
they're looking at them, or they might be covering water with a square bill or a swim
Hmm.
jig or something like that. But
Right.
it'll be a shallow pattern lake, so that'll be a fun one to watch. Should be big weights. Douglas is a lake where you can go down and you can catch a lot of bass on it. But
Hmm.
the guy who finds the consistent bigger bites, that'll be your winner.
Right. And now, kind of a side note, all these lakes that these opens and elites go to, they don't go to the same lake every year, but they tend to go to the same lake. They may rotate back and forth, but you can pretty much bet on from year to year. The majority of the lakes that they go to are going to be lakes that they have visited previously, and there a lot of them are known bass factories. There's no duds on their schedule. They don't want people. They know people won't tune in to watch a 3-day tournament, and it takes 5 or 6 pounds a day to win. That they know that people have to bring big sacks in every day, and that's what builds up viewers and stuff. And that brings us to the next lake in the Southern Division, and it's the final tournament of the Southern Division. It's in Lake Norman, North Carolina, and it is September 23rd through the 25th. And Evan, what have you got about Lake Norman? Anything special about it?
It's pretty interesting that they're taking, a massive break from tournaments between the
Yeah,
Southern
no
Division.
kidding. I mean, that's
You
that's
got
several
to,
months.
between April and September, a
Yeah.
lot's going to change. But Lake Norman is it's a really good fishery there in North Carolina. It's known for deep fishing for spots, fishing around boat docks, things like that. I'm excited to see a tournament on the Southern Open schedule that factors in some spotted bass fishing. You got guys from that area like your Brian Thrifts, Matt Aries, things like that, who are going to be fishing that tournament. Having all that local knowledge and being professional fishermen. So that'll be interesting to watch. But from what I've seen on Lake Norman, it's a deep, clear reservoir with a lot of boat docks. But it's also an offshore fishery. As far as like brush piles and rock piles and things like that. So in September, the water's going to be cooling off, just starting to cool off just a little bit. Everybody knows with the schedule they had this year where they had to postpone everything back a little bit. These tournaments, took a little bit of a fall swing, and everybody realized how tough it was, in the fall.
Yeah.
So that tournament being in September, I'm expecting to see a lot of fish on top water. That time of year, fish are schooling up on bait. They're going to be in the backs of the creeks, midways in the creeks, schooling up on bait. I'm not sure what kind of bait that, whether they have thread fins, gizzard, or blueback herring, whatever they have. But
Mm-hmm.
either way, that bait fish is going to congregate in big areas and big groups. And the
Right.
guy who gets out there and finds those massive schools of bait and presents his baits accurately and fishes for them. Top waters are going to be good, maybe a jerk bait. So that's going to be a fun tournament to watch. But we still could see a little bit of that fall funk getting to them. So it'll be an interesting tournament.
Okay. All right. Good deal. Good deal. Well, we'll jump right to the next division. The next division is the Central Division, and there's a couple of lakes there that we've talked about before. Um, there, and they have two tournaments that are in Alabama. The first one will be April 1st through the 3rd, and that is on Lewis Smith Lake. I'm assuming that Lewis Smith has a reasonable amount of spots in it. Can you give us a little bit more background on that, Evan?
Yeah, Lewis Smith. It's a well-known spotted bass fishery. It's really deep. It
Mm-hmm.
to me, Lewis Smith kind of reminds me of Cumberland in a way
Mm-hmm.
because of how many points, little pockets, little creeks, things like that run through it. I've looked at it some on Navionics just kind of before this
Mm-hmm.
to kind of get a feel for what it looks like, and just looking at it, it kind of reminded me of that Cumberland Dale Hollow vibe. With all the pockets and creeks and points that are running through it. But
Right.
Lewis Smith, it's a well-known spotted bass fishery. Being
Yeah.
there in early April, to win in Alabama in early April on really any fishery, whether you're on the Coosa River or Tennessee River or anything like that, you're going to have big largemouth. These spots, they're well known. They're really good spotted bass fisheries, but the largemouth are still going to be what propels the guys up to the top of the leaderboard and
Sure.
eventually gets them to win the tournament. So it's still
Yeah.
Alabama in April. It'll take really big bags to win, so I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's a pretty good sized reservoir. It's about 20,000 acres. And, when you were talking about it being a deep lake, yeah, the maximum depth on it's about 250 feet. So, that's amazing. You wouldn't think of those southern lakes that, that, that have that kind of depth to them. But they do for some reason. And from there they move on at the end of April, which isn't really much turnaround time. They move on April 29th through May the 1st. They move down to Pickwick Lake, which we discussed just the other day when we were talking about our Elite Series schedule. And I find it strange that this is actually the first Bassmaster Open that they've had on Pickwick. The Elite Series has been to Pickwick, a few times, but this is the first Open that they've had there. So I found that kind of odd. I figured that they had been there before. But what kind of, we'll just rehash what we talked about the other day. Just give us a little bit more background on Pickwick there, Evan.
Pickwick and that time of year, let me find my schedule here real quick. It's going, April 29th through May 1st. Pickwick at the Tennessee River fishery, it has, massive largemouth. It's a good smallmouth lake. So
Mm-hmm.
in that time of year, you should start seeing a lot of post spawn fish moving out. There will be some ledge fishing going on, but I don't think those fish will hardly be, all the way, fully into their summertime
Right,
haunts just yet.
right,
We could
right,
it
right.
it could depend on the kind of spring we have. If we have a really early spring, with if the water temperatures start warming,
Yeah,
consistently in March.
if it gets hot early, it'll speed up all that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So say we have like a really warm March and water temperatures start warming up, pretty
Mhm.
consistently in March. that might be, push it, forward about 2 weeks, and then
Hmm.
them fish could be, more in their summertime patterns. But
Sure.
either way, wherever they are, Pickwick is a great fishery. It's always taking big bags to win that tournament. It'll
Yeah.
be the guy who wins will be fishing offshore. He'll find it'll still be an electronics deal, finding schools of fish offshore, but they might
Sure.
not be all the way out on the main river just yet. You
Okay.
could find fish back in offshore in some creeks, finding them on the the single creek channels, creek bends, things like that. But the guy who
Mhm.
wins will be fishing offshore, and it will take a good bag. It's still Alabama, and late April, early May.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's gonna be a fun tournament to watch.
And then, the last tournament of that division, and there again, there's a big layoff time. They go to Grand Lake, but they don't go out there till October 21st to the 23rd. And, that's out in, Oklahoma. I mean, gosh, the weather could get kind of nasty out there at that time of year. It's hosted a couple of classics previously. The last one was in 2016, but that's more of a springtime deal. And just on a side note, a lot of people don't know this, but Grand Lake, the sailing is a big deal out there because of the consistency and the predictability of the wind there. So it's kind of like here where we are at Cave Run, the wind can really kick up here, and that's why we have the sailing we have. So the fall out there with fronts moving in and out, gosh, the wind could play a big factor out there. But besides all that, just on the fishing itself, Evan, what's the deal with just the fishing out there?
I think that Grand Lake, guys that live out there like Daryl Robertson, legends of the game, they really are the ones who put Grand Lake, out of Grove, Oklahoma on the map because, they really made the spinnerbait famous out there.
Hmm. Sure.
When anybody really thinks of, textbook spinnerbait fishing, they think of Grand Lake most of the time in April, in the spring. But the spinnerbait is still a really good bait, all the way through the fall, and where they're going to be there in October. Them fish again, they're going to be schooled up on bait. I'm not sure what kind of shad they have there, what kind of bait. More than likely, gizzard shad, threadfin shad,
Hmm.
something like that.
Sure.
They'll be they'll be schooled up, grouped up in the backs of the creeks, where that water is going to be cooling a little bit at night, and
Right.
consistently dropping at that time of year.
Right.
So the guy who wins, he'll be fishing shallow, more than likely with a spinner bait or chatterbait, swim jig, square bill, something like that that imitates shad.
Hmm.
But Grand Lake, unless it's in a winter drawdown, is a really good flipping lake too. Getting
Oh,
up there,
okay.
getting up there in the bushes, flipping bushes, things like that. And
Right.
so there's several patterns that could take place. I'm not all too familiar with Grand Lake, but it's still a great fishery, and it kicks out massive bags. We've seen the classic go there a bunch, so it's a great fishery, and it should take a good bag to win it.
Okay. Cool. All right. And then, from the Central Division, we'll jump over to the Northern Division. And the first tournament kicks off in the Northern Division. That's not till May the 13th and runs through the 15th. And it is on the James River out of Richmond, Virginia. And just kind of on a side note, it is a tidal fishery. And they have hosted an open there for 5 of the last 6 years. And Evan, just on the fishing end of things, what can you tell us about that as far as what these guys are going to be into on the James River?
The James River, it's really the only tournament on this schedule that I'm not really not that familiar with. I don't know much about it, but it's a tidal fishery. Them fish, they're used to in that tidal water, fluctuating with the water, and most of the time, um, them fish are going to be shallow on a river like that. So being there in the middle of May, those fish that basically, I think the James River, in that ballpark is really at the same
Hmm.
level, like altitude as us, just about maybe a little
Right.
bit lower. So the
Right.
water
Yeah.
temperature should be running near the same,
Hmm.
around in these parts. So in that time of year, the fish are going to be shallow. People more than likely, most of the time when we see tournaments, whether it's on the Elite Series or whatever it be, they go out of tidal fisheries and river systems. People are going to make massive runs, 100-mile runs to these separate backwaters they can get into, and
Right.
you're going to see a lot of shallow fishing. You're going to see a lot of guys up flipping bushes, throwing spinner bait, something like that. But the James River, it's really one of the stops on this schedule that I really ain't too familiar with. So it'll be, I'll definitely pay attention to it. Try and learn as much as I can about it, because
Hmm.
that's one thing I'm not really too familiar with is tidal fishing. I know a little bit about it. I know the water goes up, the water goes down. That's about all I know about it.
Well, and not only is it a regular stop for the Open, but now I think they've fished some Elite Series, and I think they've even fished a Classic or two on the James River over the years. So it's a pretty good fishery. It's known for producing fish on a regular basis. I think these guys enjoy fishing there as far as that goes. Yeah. Well, our next deal we've got going here in the Northern Division, and it's a true Northern Division now. They swing up north. Their first or their next stop, they go to Oneida Lake in Syracuse, New York, July 29th through the 31st. And being a northern lake like that, it's pretty much going to be a smallmouth bite. I'm assuming, Evan, is that correct?
Yeah, smallmouth, up in that country, they always, are a dominant factor in, big tournaments. And, I can kind of classify, the last two tournaments, Oneida and 1,000 Islands, which is the last stop of the Northern Opens. I can kind of, put them on the same playing field, except for the time of year. The time of year really is the only difference that'll make a difference in, the way they fish. But, with Oneida going out of Syracuse, New York, July 29th through the 31st, you know, that's when smallmouth fishing, gets really hot up there. People are,
Right.
taking, vacations, trips up there in that country, just to
Sure.
smallmouth fish. So
Yeah.
if that tells you anything, it's a really good fishery. Everything up there,
Hmm.
guys are going to be they're going to be utilizing their electronics, whether it be just their down imaging and side imaging, find schools of fish, or they'll be actually video game fishing or looking at them, with their live scope unit, or if they don't have that, they can look at the 2D page on their graph, and they
Hmm.
can just kind of drop on them and video game fish them. And
Now, is it going to be like what we talked about the Elite Series on Lake Champlain? Does it set up a lot like that with rocks and boulders and that kind of thing? Is it going to be about the same kind of fishing, or is that lake is the geography different on that lake?
it will. Those guys are going to be looking for smallmouth offshore, and
Hmm.
what they're looking for to find those smallmouth are going to be your rock piles. Maybe a sandbar that comes out and some offshore grass. So they're gonna be primarily looking for smallmouth, and they're gonna be fishing offshore. But something a lot of people don't think about on the northern fisheries is you still have largemouth up there, but and they're I mean there's still massive populations of them, but the only difference is the size. The smallmouth up there, 2 to 1 outweigh the
Hmm.
largemouth up there. You can
Right.
go up there and you can catch 3 to 6 pound smallmouth, pretty consistently, and that's
Right.
what it takes to win a Bassmaster Open. But you still have that population of largemouth that you can use almost as limit fillers if you can
Hmm.
go catch 3 or 4 big smallmouth. But if you're still looking for that limit filling fish, you can run into a creek or something like that and flip up or frog fish in the grass for a largemouth.
Yeah. Okay. And it brings us to our last leg of the series in the Northern Division, which is one we talked again about from the Elite Series show we did. They're going to go to the St. Lawrence River September 9th through September 31st. And, it's a smallmouth deal primarily. So, Evan, if you just want to clue us in on that again, and just kind of refresh us on what these guys are going to be doing on the St. Lawrence River.
Actually, it's the Thousand Islands on
Oh,
uh, on my schedule. It says Thousand Islands
oh,
for
okay.
the last Northern Division tournament.
Okay.
But
Sounds well.
again, it's going
Again,
to
well,
be.
then I must have read it wrong, so that's fine. Just tell us all about the Thousand Islands. Then I guess I
But
put my there.
it'll still be, around the same fishing as, the St. Lawrence River. You're going to be fishing for giant smallmouth that time of year. And, being in September in New York, it could get cold on them boys a little bit. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm
It's
sure.
going to be a smallmouth deal on the Thousand Islands. I think, where I mentioned the largemouth, on Oneida and all that stuff. I think Thousand Islands is definitely more of a smallmouth controlled environment. So most of those guys, 99 out of 100 of them will be fishing for smallmouth offshore. And, they're going to be using the same tactics as they would use on any other northern smallmouth fishery. They're going to be fishing, offshore rock piles and things like that
Mm-hmm.
with drop shots, Ned rigs, shaky heads. But you might see a few guys too casting, throwing a swim bait, throwing a big crankbait, things like that to catch some smallmouth. So you
Mm-hmm.
can do one of two things. You can either drop on them and completely rely on your electronics, or you can kind of run and gun with a crankbait or a swim bait or something like that, and just kind of fish individual rock piles and sandbars, things like that.
Right. Okay. Well, just to clarify, both of us were right. You were right in saying it was Thousand Islands, and I was right too, saying it was the St. Lawrence River. But I was reading an article here just now. I guess where they're fishing at is all the same area. So
Okay.
we were both right on that account. But it sets up to be a really nice deal. There should be some really good fishing given the times of year they're going. And, it's just something if you're thinking about taking your fishing to the next level, it's something that's not out of the realm of possibility, really. And one thing I like about the upcoming season and something that I guess that Bassmaster worked on this year as far as the technology side of thing, they are going to have expanded coverage. They're going to do more real time scoring, and they're going to have, as far as like the Elite Series, they're trying to get it set up to where they're going to have live streaming commentary by their Elite Series anglers. That fish these opens. Like I guess, say if Gerald Swindle is in is fishing on Grand Lake, then they're going to have him wired up to where he's going to be commenting all day long about what's going on, what he's doing, what the fish are doing, and that sort of thing, which I think is pretty cool. And then they've got the deal out now that they call Bass Track, where I guess it's these guys catch a fish or whatever, they upload the information and you have like a running scoreboard, a live track of who's doing what and what kind of fish they're catching. So I'm thinking it's going to be a pretty interesting, pretty entertaining deal to watch. Evan, is that what you're seeing? Is that what you're thinking with that?
Bassmaster this past year has done, so much to broadcast the fishing community. Not even
Mm-hmm.
really just it's, really not even just Bassmaster itself, but having, professional bass fishing on,
Mm-hmm.
ESPN, Fox
Right,
Sports 1, things like
right,
that. What they're
right.
doing there is really, monumental. It's helping the sport grow in a huge amount. So, really we ought to all be appreciative of what Bassmaster is doing over there, because
Yeah.
they're broadcasting the sport to millions of people on those massive television channels with ESPN, Fox
Mm-hmm.
Sports 1.
And
So
even with all the live streaming that's available now, like Bassmasters has their own live stream deal that you can download, like on the Roku or these smart TVs. Uh, and there are thousands of YouTube videos, even YouTube shows out there that Bassmaster puts out, or these Elite Series anglers have their own channels. And just with all the streaming television, you can you have access to it all the time. And I think they've really seen that there's some potential there to uh, build a bigger market share, if you will, to get more people interested in the sport.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what you're talking about with bass track and things like that. Any any time that you fish a Bassmaster organized tournament, whether it be high school, college, an open, the Elite Series, you have the opportunity to use their live leaderboard system, called Bass
Hmm.
Track. And
Right.
basically what it is you kind of just they before the tournament, they give you this number that you can text, and then all you do is you text it and you say, I don't know, fish number one, 2 pounds, 3 ounces. Fish
Right.
number two, 4 pounds, 1 ounce,
Right.
things like that. And what they do is the people at Bass, they're working behind the scenes and they go in and they update things. But,
Hmm.
what I've seen a lot of people doing is, they'll kind of sandbag, they'll
Right.
like what happened just, a couple months ago with the at the Carhart College Bass Open on Lake Cumberland, and I
Right.
was there. And the boys that won, from West Virginia, um, they're kind of known for messing around with people on the bass track a little bit. They'll say they got about 11, 12 pounds, and they'll come in and they'll weigh 15, 16 pounds on the stage. So it's something
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to use
Yeah.
the
Sure.
bass track system, but it's a really good thing for the sport.
All right. Well, Evan, we're about ready to wrap it up for today. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Any observations as far as with this new open schedule, or even going back to our Elite Series deal? Anything else you'd like to add before we close it out today?
I think we pretty much touched base on everything.
All right. Well, good deal. Well, folks, we appreciate you tuning in, and we hope you enjoy our content. And we're just going to try to stay at the forefront of any this fishing news and techniques and new products and all this kind of thing. So be sure to subscribe and download and listen, and hopefully we can give you something you're looking for there as far as in the world of fishing goes. And we appreciate you listening, and get outdoors with Hook Outdoors.